Okay. All right. So I want to read The Three Little Pigs. I know it's corny, right? But the reason I want to read it is because of what's in it. To show Satan has been pushing his plan for a very long time. And most of the time we don't even notice it, right? And I see it in here. And I want to share that. So this is an English-Spanish one. I'm going to read the English.
Well, thanks, yeah. My wife would like the Spanish one, but so who actually wrote The Three Little Pigs? Where does it come from? Is it
I don't know. I know it's, we'd have to look it up. Let's look it up after I read it. Okay. So the Three Little Pigs. So it's interesting. First of all, let's just start with this real quick. When we read the scriptures, swine is always bad, right? For one, it's unclean. It's unkosher food, which is still in effect. Acts 10 and 11 we could talk about, Acts 15. Anyways, but swine is unclean. And the main part of the story is what? Swine, pigs, uncleanliness. Also, a wolf is a destroyer in the scriptures and even in the occult. It's the destroyer. All right. Anyways. How am I gonna? I guess I'll show the picture and then read it.
Okay.
I can't turn the camera like that. In a clearing in the forest, there lived three joyful little pigs with their parents. One day, they decided to build their own houses. On saying goodbye, their parents told them, love one another and take care of one another. So it's interesting. In the occult, in pagan worlds, the forest is a place of worship. Now, these three little pigs, which I'm going to argue are three kingdoms, they learned from their parents and then left. So the three kingdoms that I'm going to tie it to are before Noah, Babylon, and the current whore. They learned from Satan, and then they went out to go make their own kingdoms. Also, it's interesting. It doesn't say love everyone. It says love those who are like you. In fact, Sermon on the Mount, right? Christ brings out that even I don't remember the exact quote, but even the Pharisees and the publicans love themselves. You should go out and love everyone. And here they're saying just love each other, which is what they do, but they don't go out and love everyone. So here's them going out and about. The three pigs left very happily. They were singing with some clothes packed on their shoulders with some tools. Suddenly, one of them stopped. This is where I'll build my house, he explained very confidently. And he built it within 2 hours with some straw he found because he was anxious to start playing with soccer. Now that sounds innocent enough, right? But it's interesting. What year did the flood happen? It was the end of the 2,000 years, the first 2,000 years. When did he build his house? In 2 hours. Now, 2 and 2, is that just a coincidence or is that by design? I would argue by design. Now, hopefully, as we go through the rest of this, you'll see lots more correlations, and the question would have to be asked: after how many coincidences is it actually a coincidence versus it's actually by design? He explained very confidently, and he built it in 2 hours with some straw he found. Now, in just before the flood, they were there was a prophecy about a, a son being born that would then make it easier to do farming, that he would create the plow. And so I find it interesting that they're using straw, which is something that you have to cultivate and plow and farm. There's another correlation. And he's anxious to start playing soccer. So just before the second coming, it'll be like in the days of Noah, just before the flood. And what's going on right now? A lot of sexual immorality. And he wanted to play with balls. I'll leave it at that. You could probably get it from there. But I just find that, there's a lot of correlations there. Okay, so here's the next one. The second pig.
Mhm.
The second little pig, who was a music fan, built his house quickly with some logs he found in the forest. He finished it in one afternoon because he was in a hurry and wanted to start playing the flute. Now, that sounds innocent. Anyways, so he finished it in one afternoon. What's it at its brightest in the noon? The sun. Babylon is all about sun worship. The focus on this one is the time, afternoon, when the sun is its brightest. Also, I find it interesting that he wanted to play the flute. That's like playing music. The gospel should be music to our ears. But pretty much most of everything that we have today that's of the occult or antichrist, or in pretty much all religions, at least mainstream ones, come from Babylon. But this is why the LDS Church can claim that their temple ceremony can be found all through antiquity. Well, because it is. It's Mystery Babylon. Mystery Babylon learned everywhere. So just because you find it everywhere doesn't mean it's good. Mystery Babylon's everywhere.
Sure.
But also there's I'm forgetting the name of the other tale, but the guy with the flute that went around playing his flute, and then all the children started following him.
The Pied Piper of
Yeah,
Hamelin.
the Pied Piper. I think that goes along with this also. And the Pied Piper wasn't good. He's playing out bad music, but with our, carnal natures that we're born with, there's a tendency for our human flesh to want to go after that stuff, right? Anyways, it's just, I find it interesting. Afternoon, sun worship, he wanted to play the flute. He wanted to give away all this false gospel to get people to follow after him. Nimrod, it's an interesting story. Okay, so here's the third little pig. Is it coming up? It's kind of fuzzy, but oh well. The third little pig was very hardworking, and he built his house with determination and effort. He built it with bricks because he wanted a strong, safe, and comfortable house. It took him more than a week. Although he was exhausted when finished, he felt very proud when he saw it ready. A week. What happens at the end of the week? Judgment. Christ is coming back in judgment. And I find it interesting that it's tied to a week here. We have 6 days to work and 1 day to rest. And it's the end, at the last and final day, that they have up till then. This whore to try to convince everybody, right? So here's the wolf blowing the house down. Now, it's in the scriptures, who has power over the east winds to send punishments and curses? It's God. God is the one that has power over the wind to send, and it's a curse when he sends it. The three little pigs lived very quietly, visiting one another very often, until one day when the big bad wolf appeared. Now, like I mentioned earlier, a wolf is the destroyer. Who is destroying these kingdoms? It's God. God destroyed the kingdom before Noah with a flood. God destroyed Babylon by confounding the language, and God will destroy the whore with fire. Anyways, big bad wolf appeared, and in front of the straw house he exclaimed, "Open the door, I'll huff and puff and blow your house in." So afraid the little pig was that he didn't even answer. So the wolf blew strongly, and the little house was blown in. During Noah's time, they didn't take Noah seriously. They didn't know what to say, right? Just like this pig didn't know what to say.
Right.
So here's the. Although the little pig was terribly frightened, he took courage and ran towards his brother's log house, where he found shelter. Immediately the wolf arrived. "Open the door, I'll huff and puff and blow your house in." And he blew once and again until he blew the little house in. So I also find it interesting here that the first little pig went to the second pig when his house was blown down or destroyed. His kingdom was destroyed. So the Masons have lore that there were stones built up before the flood and that they found them after the flood. And these stones had these writings and teachings that they go off of. And so the little pigs talking to each other, to me, represent how the later kingdoms are using the teachings of the earlier kingdoms. In fact, a lot of things that have to do with the Catholic Church and symbology and the mainstream media, they're always reading books. They're looking towards their pagan fathers, the false teachings from before that are in the books. I just find it interesting. Here, these pigs are going and conversing with each other, right? And helping each other. Well, that's what's going on today.
Okay.
So he blew the house in. Now, this is where they start changing the story some from what the scriptures say in prophecy versus how they want it to be. I mean, they can't change the past. They know what happened. They can't change that. But they do want people to think the future is going to be different. So here's the story or the picture. The two little pigs ran and ran towards the house made of bricks. So Mystery Babylon has all these ancient teachings in it, which is the Catholic Church really doesn't base its teachings off of the Bible. It's all off of the pagan religions. It's everywhere. Their holidays, their teachings. In fact, like I was telling you the other day, that the 15 leaders in the LDS Church goes along with how pagan religions had 15 leaders themselves. I see that Brigham Young or someone later saw that and took something that Joseph Smith restored and twisted it into paganism.
Sure. And do these 15 pagan leaders have titles or names?
I'm sure they do. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to go look up again. It's hard to remember everything.
Yeah.
I remember enough that helps me make some connections, but I'd have to go quote things. And I think that's partly why it takes me longer to write my blogs, because I quote and I give articles so other people can read what I'm stating. It's not just me. It's in the scriptures, and other people have brought some things out also that relate to it. But anyways, they sheltered together. Together, the three little pigs locked the door and the windows, which, I mean, not letting anything in, right? Closing your heart. Anyways, you could even almost kind of like this pandemic that's going on right now. Oh, hold on 1 minute. I mean, the pandemic is shutting people in right now. So, I mean, that might be too much of a correlation there. But I do find it interesting, right?
Yeah.
Soon the wolf arrived. Open the door or I'll blow your house in, he roared angrily. And he blew and blew once and again, but this time he couldn't succeed. He couldn't even loose a brick. Now, this is where they're starting to change the narrative some, because it hasn't happened yet, so they think they can get away with it, but they're not. Now, it's interesting. Look here. They're building a fire, right? And this actually looks somewhat like a witch's cauldron. But anyways, but this next part is interesting. It's always, oh, this is kind of hard. Furious and breathless, the wolf climbed up on the roof and slid down the chimney. But he fell over a saucepan with boiling water, which the little pigs had placed when guessing his intentions. Immediately, he ran towards a stream to refresh his burnt tail, and he never ever returned. This way, the three little pigs got rid of the wolf and learned that nothing should be done in a hurry. Now, this is interesting. In the end, where does Christ come from? He comes from the top where everybody can see, and he descends down. And that's what's going on with the chimney. He is descending down the chimney. And also interesting, what did they do? There was fire, right? Remember the fire?
Yeah.
What happens just before he comes down? There's a fire. Also, after this third try, God will never try again to recover them. It's Judgment Day. It's the last time. And what happens after the third time? They got rid of him, right? He never came back again. Just like what's really going to happen. This is the last page. But these nursery rhymes are anti-gospel, but they look so innocent. I mean, maybe I'm seeing too much in it. I don't think so. I think it was designed that way, personally.
Sure. I mean, what you say there is very clever, and could well be right. But I'd be wanting to know where the tales came from originally.
Sure.
How old are they? What sort of people? I know the Grimm brothers collected a whole lot of tales.
Did the Grimm brothers do it? I know they did it, like Little Mermaid and some other ones.
Yeah, they went around to Eastern Europe, Central Europe, because they used to have, I can't remember what they called them now, but they were storytellers. The villages had their own storytellers, the tribes had the storytellers, and they passed these tales on over the generations. And the Grimm brothers got to them just before they died out.
Was in Tommy's Thumb little book around 1760. According to this right here.
Okay, so that wouldn't have been a Grimm brother when I'm taking it then.
I don't remember much about the Grimm brothers' history. My first ex-wife liked to talk about how she was related to the Grimm brothers. Which,
really? Oh wow.
I actually don't think that's something to brag about, considering what their stories actually teach when you look into the details. Because, like, Disney, they have taken those horrible stories and tried to make them look nice. Anyways, that's a...
Yeah, no, there were some But they didn't actually write the stories, the Grimm brothers. From what I've read, they just collected them from these storytellers in Eastern Europe, and that had been passed down from generations for a long, long time.
That could be. In fact, I mean, even the Three Little Pigs that I just read could be a slight modification of the original. But
yeah, because I've not heard the details of that before, but I've heard the Three Little Pigs, which is why I'm interested as to know who wrote it.
Sure.
Because that would make a lot of difference as to what you were saying, how you interpret it.
Oh no! Oh wait, the Little Piggy origin. I think I typed in origin of the three. I forgot three. That might change it a little bit. The Three Little Pigs. A fable. Build a house. Material. A big bad wolf. Printed editions, 1840. So I did the Little Pig on accident instead of the Three Little Pigs, and that's a different story, right? The Little Piggy is the one down with your toes. So I typed the wrong thing on accident.
Okay, well, I see in the one below, the Three Little Pigs history, it says it's a lot older than 1840.
Yeah, much older than that. Here we can, let's see. So there's variations. No, that's later. No, not too much of when it first was about. Let's see Wikipedia. 1840. It's a type B1. I don't know what that is.
What's that?
It's a type B124. I have no idea.
No, I don't know.
Three other versions. 1890. Okay. Emanated 1930. Television, literature. Oh, let's see, 18.
Yeah, it says here originally the Three Little Pigs were little pixes originally, and the wolf was a fox. And the three houses were made of wood, stone, and iron. And in another version, Big Bad Wolf was actually a big, kind wolf.
Oh, kind. That's interesting. So
a bit more than what you were saying.
Yeah, it's been modified some, but I think though, so which I don't have a problem with it. So God just can speak to his prophets and give them words. Satan doesn't do that too much. I think there's times where he does, but a lot of these people who are reading or writing these stories, I think they're getting little insights here and here from Satan, and I think then people pick up and correct it or fix it or make it better. Like even most believers in God don't actually hear God's voice, right? I have a couple times, but on a regular basis, not. And so, but the prophets in the scriptures, they did, and they give us his words. While we're still figuring things out, we're putting the scriptures together to help understand the whole picture. And so I don't have too much a problem with them. It's slowly getting better over time. But I don't know. Anyways, at least this edition, I see a lot that deals with history, prophecy, and history that actually happened. It's trying to make the bad side look good. Just like Satan's very good at making evil look good and good look evil, right?
Yeah.
That book is about making the unclean look good and God, the wolf, look evil, right? So anyways, but I see it in like tons of nursery rhymes. Not all, but most. And maybe I don't see it in all yet because I'm not knowledgeable enough yet. But I don't know. I see like connections with pretty much every single main point in the storyline.
Yeah, I think there are deeper meanings to them. I've got a book somewhere. I'm not sure if I've got it over here or not. Yeah. This is a slightly different take. It's Stories of Lost Israel in Folklore
Oh,
by Reverend James B. Paget.
does it have the
There
seven
he told
dwarfs in
the
it?
brothers.
Does it have Snow White and the seven dwarfs?
It does, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think that's about Israel.
he would
Here,
definitely.
look,
I don't know if it does it independently.
here, let me show you a quote from a post I'm almost done with.
Sure.
That it would be a big reason why I think it's not, but there's multiple other reasons I don't think it is. Here, let me share my screen real quick again. But it has to do with Snow White. This one. Oh, yeah, here we go. So
I'm just going to close the door. Can you hear
yeah,
Danielle speaking?
a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just close the door a bit.
So, I'll just read this little part. We can go read the verse. But before we look at the three passages I want to talk about, leprosy some. When someone has leprosy, their skin is as white as snow. And so here, we can, we can go get the verse. We can see it. And that's exactly how they describe Snow White's skin, white as snow. And that's a curse that came because of a sin of rejecting the Lord's leaders. Now, I may disagree with some people on who those leaders are. So let me share the other screen. Stop share that one. But so Numbers 12 is about, and this is just goes in the reason why I'm going my post, and I'll give a little bit on this. It's Miriam and Aaron, Jews, complaining that Moses married a non-Israelite. And marriage is symbolic of coming into a covenant relationship. And God came into a covenant relationship. Like there's a big focus on that, with the Gentiles coming. Because Acts 10 is about getting rid of the Jewish false tradition, oral law, Talmud, that says you can't go give the gospel to the Gentiles because you're supposed to. In fact, at Sinai, it was a mixed multitude. It was not just the Jews. It was Gentiles also, including Egyptians. But anyways, but here they are. They're complaining about Moses that he married a non-Israelite. And because of that complaining, they get cursed. Because of that sin, they got cursed. Verse 12. And let her not be as one dead. Leprosy, when you have leprosy, your skin is white. White, and when you die, your skin turns white because the blood's not in it anymore. In fact, when you're not being covered by Christ's blood, you're dead. When you're dead, the blood drains out of you and your skin looks white because the blood's not with you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Of whom the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb. No, that's the wrong verse. Where's the whitest snow? Oh, here we go. It's 10. Sorry. I did the wrong verse. But that was still a good one to talk about, right?
Sure.
And the cloud departed off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous. And women are symbolic of churches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this Jewish church became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron took upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And leprous is symbolic of a sinner. Anyways, also back to the Snow White, her hair is black, and hair is symbolic of authority, and black is of wickedness. Black authority that made her skin white as snow because of the sins. It's not about Israel. It's about the whore.
Well, the Reverend Haggart, his take on it is that Israel is sometimes represented by a woman, and he goes to Isaiah, I think chapter 1, verse 18, and it's talking about the sins being made as white as snow, forgiven. So he has a little bit of a different
I
take.
can kind of see that. At least within the story, because I have one of these books with Snow White that I've read a million times to my kids, putting them to sleep.
Yeah.
I just see too many connections. In fact, like Snow White, she eats the apple and almost dies, right? When you eat the sin, you die. Garden of Eden. And she gets placed in the glass box until the prince comes. When the Antichrist prince comes, he revives the whore. It gives her power back. She won't be sleeping because she's wounded right now. But when the Antichrist comes, the whore will get her power back. I see too many connections.
Sure. He goes into quite depth as well himself. But again, it would come back, I think, a bit to where do these stories come from? Who wrote them? And why?
Sure, yeah. I do think the origin has some effect on it. And I'll be honest, though, even if maybe originally was Israel, which I actually somewhat doubt, because she goes into the forest, right? Which I mentioned earlier with the three little pigs. That's sacred place to the pagans.
Sure.
Forest. Also, animals. I mean, I could go get my edition, but she goes and the animals of the forest comfort her. Animals are symbolic of tribes. In fact, Acts 10, people claim about that, saying now you can eat unkosher. No, Gentiles were represented by unclean animals, just as in his dream. And he got told to go give the gospel to the Gentiles. That was the end of the 70th year, which the Daniel's 70th year prophecy. He was done.
Mm.
Christ was done with the Jews. I mean, they
That's
should have
right.
been given it to the Gentiles before that,
Mm.
but that was the end of the 70 weeks, because Christ came in the middle of it. Anyways, I just...
He did. Yeah, and the context of the dream, it was taking the gospel to the Gentiles.
Yeah, it was not about you can eat pig. In fact,
No.
Peter told us what it was about in Acts 10 and Acts 11. It was about giving the gospel to the Gentiles. And in fact, in even Acts
Yeah, I agree.
15, one of the things that the convert Gentiles were told to do was to be kosher in Acts 15, which happened after that. And so
Wow.
Acts 10 can't be about it being okay to eat unkosher food, because Acts 15, which happened later, James, the head bishop of the church, said, this is what we need to do. And part of it was be kosher. Start being kosher. And
Yeah, because pigs and the other unclean meat, it wasn't just symbolic at the time. They actually were unclean and weren't very healthy to eat. And
well,
their
they
biology
still
didn't
actually
suddenly
are.
change.
I mean, you can go find videos on YouTube how pigs have worms and they enter you.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
they're on my kosher resource page. I have some videos of Walter something, I can look it up, where he actually gives scientific evidence that the unclean food is more toxic.
Mm.
In fact, I find that kosher is a sub-law of thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill thyself by eating poisonous food.
Mm. And it is. It's. I've read up about pigs and such like as well, and prawns, and whatever.
Yeah,
They
in fact,
are
he went through a lot of the unclean food and clean food and showed scientifically how it's got more, they have a significantly higher toxic level in their flesh / meat that people eat. It's poison. It's slowly killing yourself.
It was before Christ came, and the animals didn't change in their makeup after
No,
it been. So the same creatures.
no. If you want, what changed is the daily performances and ordinances, though, that were given to the Israelites because they rejected the law. They were giving as a punishment more to help remind them. And that punishment only went to the time that he was killed, died, then it ended. And that's what I see taught in the Book of Mormon. That's what I see taught in the 70 weeks prophecy from Daniel. I see it in the New Testament, because in the New Testament, Paul did sacrifices in the temple. In prophecy, in the millennium, we'll be doing sacrifices in the millennium, according to Isaiah, Zechariah, and Ezekiel are three books that I know that talk about it. Oh, Malachi, another one, which is actually even in the one that's quoted in the Book of Mormon, Malachi 3. And Joseph Smith has quotes. Here, I'll show you a post I'm working on where Joseph Smith, let's see.
Yeah, the sons of Levi will offer up.
Yeah,
But,
here, I'll...
Do you know why? Because I'd always thought that it was pointing towards the great sacrifice of the Saviour. So,
so the daily performances and ordinances are that way, but not everything is daily performances and ordinances. I think it's this one. I have yeah, here we go. So here's a big quote from Joseph Smith on it. Right there, we can read it if you want. But he does, but those things which existed prior to Moses' day. So before the daily performances and ordinances, because those were given as a punishment. But he talks about which ordinances will be continued when the priesthood is restored with all its authority. This also brings out how Joseph Smith didn't restore everything, right? Because Joseph Smith didn't restore that. Anyways, but see, prior to the law of Moses, he also talks about how they have to be restored, otherwise it's not a restoration, which shall be continued at the last time. All the ordinances and the duties which have been required by the priesthood under the direction and the commandments of the Almighty of any of the dispensations shall be held in the last dispensation. But then he does the qualifier, except, before Moses, because the law of Moses is daily performances and ordinances. In fact, I think I have a good quote from the Book of Mormon on that. Actually, I have a lot. We can look at that. Hold on. Let me share my... No, they're... I don't have everything the best organized.
That's right. You've done a lot of work there.
Okay. Here we go. So we can go read 13. I mean, this is, and 12. And I say unto you that it is expedient that there should be a law given on the children of Israel, yea, even a very strict law. It's talking about the law of Moses, which was given as a punishment. It was expedient because they didn't keep what they were first given. For they were stiff-necked people, quick to do iniquity, and slow to remember the Lord their God. I mean, they just came out of Egypt, right? They had... So some people will say it's easy to take the person out of the Egypt, but it's very hard to take Egypt out of the person, right? It takes time. I mean, I'm still unlearning things myself growing up with false traditions. It takes time. Though, sure. I would say I can definitely understand God's wrath, because with all those miracles that they saw and how he saved them so many times after they complained, but then they just kept complaining and kept going back, even after they covenanted not to. Therefore, there was a law given them, a law of performances and ordinances, a law which they were to observe strictly day to day, daily performances and ordinances. And the Book of Mormon brings this daily performances and ordinances quite often, to keep them in remembrance of God and their duty towards him. But behold, I say unto you that all these things were types of things to come. Those daily performances and ordinances completely taught of Christ's first coming. So, anyway,
sure.
We can look at some others. 25, look. Insomuch that it was expedient, you must keep the performances and ordinances of God until the law shall be fulfilled, which was given unto Moses. Performances and ordinances, and earliest is the daily ones, right?
Okay.
So I'm tying multiple scriptures together, but that's what you have to do, because prophets don't teach the whole thing there. Most of the time they talk about the part that they're trying to help the person understand. They don't go into every single detail like people think we need to today, because they addressed the concern that the people had, and they didn't have a concern with every single bit of it, right? Or they focused on the most important part, right? But here, performance and ordinances. In even for, do I have one on 4th Nephi here? Yeah, look here. 4th Nephi, right? After the resurrection. And they did not walk anymore after the performances and ordinances of the law of Moses. You see how these earlier ones were defining that as the daily performances and ordinances from Moses because they were stiff-necked, meaning punishment. And I don't have this one handy because I have more in my head, some in my head and some in my notes and some in my email, but the D&C talks about how the law of Moses was given as a punishment. And the Book of Mormon talks about it too. Anyways.
Sure. Do you have some scriptures which explain why they will still be offering up sacrifices?
Oh, yeah. We still will. For one, it's, did Adam give sacrifice?
But that was still before, wasn't it?
But that was before Moses. Remember I read parts from the big quote from Joseph Smith said prior to the law of Moses. And I think that's a lot of it because that was given as a punishment. They were doing sacrifices before. In fact, when in Egypt, like first Moses said to the Pharaoh, like, let my people go into the wilderness to give sacrifices. That was before the law of Moses. And right there, he wanted to go give sacrifice 3 days away from Egypt. And Pharaoh didn't let him because he's worried, well, you won't come back, right? Which is a valid concern, right?
Yeah.
Why would they come back while they're out there? But the reason why they had to go out away from Egypt to do it is because the Egyptians worshipped the animals. This also goes along how we were talking about earlier about Hitler, right? Hitler put these laws in to defend the animals. These pagans want to defend animals. I think that's partly why the doctrine of demons. Don't eat them. That's a doctrine of demons. There's all this emphasis in pantheons and paganism of protecting and worshiping the animals. In fact, at Passover, it was quite a test of faith to put the blood of the lamb on the door because that was illegal.
Was it?
Oh. Right, because the Egyptians worshipped animals. You couldn't kill them. And here they are, putting a blood of an animal on their doorstep, boldly claiming, I did what God told me to do, regardless of what you're saying I can do. Are we supposed to fear God, trust God, or fear man, trust man? Are we supposed to respect God and what he says, or trust God and what he says? Those who put the blood on the doorpost trusted God over what man said. I remember growing up LDS, right? And the prophets or false prophets, false leaders would say, well, if you follow the laws of the land or, God's commandments, there would be no reason for you to break the law. I see a completely different story throughout the scriptures, including that a pivotal event, Passover, which is completely representative of Christ and what he did for us.
It sure is. I come back again. I mean, apart from Adam, is there anything which explains why we would still I just sacrifice afterwards?
Sure. So Moses wanted to take the Israelites to go do sacrifices. First thing, one of the first things, his first visit to Pharaoh, let us go do sacrifice. That was before the law of Moses. Zechariah talks about if you don't do sacrifices and go to the temple, During Feast of Tabernacles, you won't get rain.
Sure.
Ezekiel.
But these are all still before the actual sacrifice, whether it was part of the law of Moses or not. It was still
Ezekiel,
before.
I mean,
It was still before
Zechariah
the sacrifice.
is talking about the millennium. Millennium is in the future. It hasn't happened yet.
Okay. Have you got the reference for that?
I'm going to check. I think it's Zechariah 14.
Oops.
Also, tons of chapters in Ezekiel, like Ezekiel 40 through 46 talks about the temple in the millennium, and they have them doing animal sacrifices. And that's about the millennium. In fact, one thing that helps prove that it's the millennium, the third temple in Jerusalem, the Antichrist cannot enter. In fact, I'm working on a post on this. Let me see. There's some scriptures that actually says that. I don't remember off the top of my head. Oh, Ezekiel 43:7 and 44:9 state, "No foreigner uncircumcised in heart or flesh shall enter my sanctuary," the third temple. And so this idea, and this helps prove that the false idea that the Antichrist is going to enter the third temple is false. Because Ezekiel 43:7 and 44:9 specifically state something that shows that that's not the case. And what they're doing it is they're basing it off of a twisting of Daniel's 70th week, which is actually about Christ and not the Antichrist. So
the visit of the Antichrist to the temple is usually based on is it Second Thessalonians, Second or First Thessalonians? We're talking about the coming to the temple. Is that
gets into a translation issue, if I'm remembering correctly. But there's a translation issue in the New Testament where two different Greek words are both translated as temple. One dealing with the physical our physical body, and one doing actually with the temple. And they're actually the Greek words behind the English words are actually two different words translated into the same one into English. So here, I'll give you this article that I'm actually quoting in an article that I'm writing, deals with that, and I'll give it to you. But this is a very good article that deals with the third temple, showing that it's going to have animal sacrifices in it, among other things.
Yeah, I was just sort of reading through Ezekiel 43 while you're saying that, and yeah, it does seem to say that, doesn't it? So what's the reason? Why do they need to carry on having these sacrifices? I'm not disputing that they do, but what's the reason? If the sacrifice of the Saviour has already taken place, why do they still offer sacrifices after that?
Remind us of his sacrifice. Also, Joseph Smith has a quote that the ordinances shall not be changed. If it was done before, it needs to be done again. Where the law of Moses, the daily performance and ordinances, was a punishment. And it was done in addition to the law, not instead of. And I think this is what gets a lot of people tripped up. The law of Moses was done in addition to the law, not instead of. And it's not... In the scriptures, here's another tradition that's in the early church and other Christians. There's a higher law and a lower law. Where's the scriptures say that? I know no scripture. I know traditions. I know no scripture that teaches it. There's one law. It's just how well are you keeping it?
Yeah, I think it usually gets expressed in that way with the Ten Commandments, because the Joseph Smith version talks about the original commandments that Moses came down from the mountain with a higher law, and then when he saw the worshipping of the calf, he smashed them and then got another set, and that was the Ten Commandments as we have them now.
Sure. And people say that because they don't know that the second set was an exact copy of the first. The Torah states that it's the exact same copy. In fact, I even see lots of symbolism in that event. It has to do with what's going on today also. I don't know if you want to get into that some, but there, as Paul stated, these histories were written to help enlighten us today. And they do a lot once you get some good understanding under your belt. It's just all over the place. And I try to share it in some of my posts. I know I'm slow at it, but I do put a lot of effort into them, trying to bring these things.
No, it's time consuming. No, you do well to do it at all, really.
And another problem is I have to work because I don't practice priestcraft. And I spend time with my family. So and having two little boys consumes a lot of time. And I want to spend time with my wife too.
Of course, yeah. Definitely, yeah.
But I do try. I pretty actively. There was a time I stopped, but lately I've been working on it at least every other day. And sometimes I stay up all night and I just get a couple hours of sleep and then I go do my normal activities. It's not like I'm dilly-dallying. It's just it takes a lot of effort. In fact, part of the reason I wanted to read the three little pigs, because it's easier to, I put less effort into expounding it or getting resources when I'm doing it like just kind of like just off the cuff with you here, where if I wrote a post to do that, it would take me a long time to write a post because I'd go get the quotes, get really technical to make it easier to see where I'm coming from. But reading it to you, I'll just kind of respond to your questions as we're going. So it's a lot easier. That's the way I do things. I hear a lot of feedback. I didn't hear you.
I was just looking at the Joseph Smith translation for Exodus 34, the first couple of verses. And it says, "Then the Lord said unto Moses, Hew thee 2 other tablets of stone, like unto the first, and I'll write upon them also the words of the law, according as they are written at the first on the tables, which thou breakest. But it shall not be according to the first, for I will take away the priesthood out of their midst. Therefore my holy order and the ordinances thereof shall not go before them. My presence shall not go up in their midst, lest I destroy them. But I will give unto them the law as at the first, but it should be after the law of a carnal commandment. For I have sworn in my wrath that they shall not enter into my presence, into my rest in the days of their pilgrimage." So there, I'm not sure. Actually, just reading through that, he says it's going to be the same, but then he kind of says it's.
Yeah, I think there's, because it is kind of confusing, right? And there's some idioms in there that I don't know how to completely expound that to make it completely clear, because in that it kind of says both, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's because we don't know enough Hebrew idioms to completely understand what's being stated. And so I can't expound that enough to clear up the muddiness in it. Sorry.
No, it's all right. But
the law of Moses is sometimes referred as the carnal, but it was not. Instead, it was an addition, because they. TC, hold on. Yeah, he likes to share. Back onto this, like the high holidays. When you go look at Leviticus 23, it talks about we're supposed to keep them for all generations, forever. That doesn't end. In fact, like Zechariah 14 that we talked a little bit about, it shows how in the millennium, if you don't keep tabernacles and do its sacrifices, which includes animal sacrifice, and when you look through Mosiah 2 through 5, they did animal sacrifices, and you go look at the subjects of Mosiah 2 through 5, it's tabernacles. It's the reigning of the king. That's what tabernacles is about. It's about the king coming and reigning. Anyways, that was before Moses. Adam was doing it. Cain and Abel was doing it. Abraham did it. A lot of the events in Abraham's life that we have in the record are during the high holidays. It doesn't come out and say it, but when you know the high holidays, you can see all the correlations.
Okay.
Like I just kind of correlated the three little pigs, right? It doesn't come out and say this, but the more you know, the more you can see and recognize what's going on. A lot of the stuff in the New Testament with Christ was Christ going to Jerusalem during the high holidays, and it was recorded. A lot of the discourses in the New Testament, in the Gospels, in the four Gospels, are during high holidays of Christ going, being there, and coming back.
Yeah, that's true. And you're saying that they still do the sacrifices, or will continue to do them in the millennium.
Yeah.
Because as a remembrance, but the Lord left us the sacrament.
They did.
You know,
Abraham did
wine and the
sacrament.
bread, as remembrance of his sacrifice.
The sacrament was before also. Abraham did sacrament.
He did, didn't he? That's true. Yeah.
And the Jews did the sacrament before also. It was nothing new. Jesus Christ, Yeshua, was restored like Moses, like Abraham, and like Joseph Smith. They were restoring truth, not bringing new truths. In fact, this is restoration, right? We believe in the restoration through Joseph Smith, and so do many others, or claim to, right? But they think that a restoration can change what was done in the past. That's not a restoration. Restoration is bringing back what was done in the past, not changing what was done in the past. So if you think what Joseph Smith did was changing what was done, you don't know the definition of restoration, because that word itself states it needs to be brought back to how it was done before, not something different like people claim.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, we can go read the 1828 definition of restoration to see what it's.
No, it's all right. No, I don't challenge the meaning of restoration. Yeah, I understand where you're going with that.
But I do understand it's quite different than what Christianity teaches. But I'm not a Christian. I'm a Nazarene.
All right.
Nazarene Mormon, yeah. So a lot of people don't know there's lots of different sects of Judaism or believers. Anyways, Judah is an overloaded word because it could mean that you lived in the southern kingdom. It could mean that you're of the tribe of Judah, or it could mean that you're an Israelite, a believer, right? It's an overloaded word that you need context to know what you're saying. But anyways, a Nazarene was a Jewish sect that believed Jesus was the Christ, that kept Torah, and after his resurrection, they didn't keep the law of Moses. But they still did the other things, the Torah, The law is eternal. It doesn't change.
Mhm.
What I think trips a lot of people up is the law of Moses was a punishment for a period of time that was then taken away. And I think a lot of people tie Torah and law of Moses together, where they're actually separate. Where I say, as I see in the Book of Mormon, and this is actually reading the Book of Mormon and trying to figure things out of this nature, is how I kind of came to this. And then later, I then saw how the Daniel's 70th week teaches it also. But it's the daily performances and ordinances that went away. Now, when the temple comes back, they're not going to be the daily performances and ordinances. Because
Right, yeah.
the Jews, they had to kill animals every single day. And on the Sabbaths, they did more than the work days. And then even on new moons, they did more than the weekly Sabbaths. They had to do things every single day. Where Torah doesn't say that. Law of Moses does.
Yeah, interesting. It's I'm going to cut and run in a minute.
Okay, so one last one real quick. Like Paul, the Nazarite vow, which is, so there's the Nazarite vow versus the Nazarite sect. Paul did the Nazarite vow, and part of the vow is doing animal sacrifice. And he did that in the New Testament after the resurrection in Acts. The whole book of Acts is after the resurrection. He did that. That's an animal sacrifice.
Okay, yeah, no, it's very interesting. I do remember hearing this before about the sacrifices when the sons of Levi shall again offer up the sacrifice. It was just, I could never really understand why. You've helped a long way towards that.
I'm glad I know. I understand because Christianity, even one that we both were part of, like the LDS Church, teaches no more. But Joseph Smith teaches differently, and so does the scriptures, including the Book of Mormon.
Well, the LDS Church did teach there would be some in the millennium, because I remember that during an institute lesson.
They used to, because
they stopped now.
Smith did, but they kind of don't now. They sadly, over time, they keep coming more Protestant and Catholic. I mean, the cross is bad. The crucifix that people wear, we can get into that if you want, but the LDS Church actually used to use them and wear them.
Up until the 1950s, I understand.
Give or I thought it was 1920s. Something like that. Deseret News has an article about it. Anyways, it's history.
I've got a book on it, The Banish of the Cross or something. But
oh, I didn't know there was a book on it, but I'm not surprised.
There is, yeah.
But
I think it said it was during David O. McKay's reign. And I think it was. I'd have to double check. But I think that there'd been a row with the Catholic Bishop of Salt Lake.
From my understanding, the reason they stopped it is during the days when the U.S. government forced people not to use wine or any alcohol, right? The prohibition.
The prohibition, yeah.
Before that, they actually used wine for the sacrament and actually had a wine mission where people went for the church to make wine for the sacrament.
Really? What, during the 1900s?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, there's records of people paying tithing in wine.
So when did Brigham Young or whoever it was make it a commandment that you couldn't drink wine?
He made it a commandment, and then he uncommanded it too. Because even after he supposedly made not drinking a commandment, he still drank it himself, and so did early leaders. It wasn't until 1920 they actually started really enforcing it, and I have quotes. Anyways.
Yeah, well, they had their own distillery, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. In fact, Brigham Young, that was a big export of Salt Lake, was alcohol. for a very, very long time. In fact, the word of wisdom actually states use wine for the sacrament and beer is good for you.
It does, yeah, that's right.
And people will want to use D&C 27 as an argument why we shouldn't, but 27 doesn't say you can't use wine. It says don't go buy wine from your enemies.
Yes,
but
yeah.
then it states now go make your own, because that's the thing. LDSites, they'll proof text for what they want, but they won't read the text around it. And right after it says you can use whatever you want, it says now go make your own wine. Right after that verse, the next verse states go make your own wine. Now, so the reason, this is how I put it together. There's a high preference on wine, but it can't be required. For those who have taken the Nazarite vow, they can't drink wine. So you can't make wine a requirement for the sacrament because of the Nazarite vow.
Okay.
That's what I believe. It's anyway.
So what do you take? Grape juice for?
No, I do wine.
Oh, you do wine?
Yeah.
I thought you said you were a Nazarite. Oh.
There's a difference between the Nazarite vow and the Nazarite sect, which can be a little confusing. I use, because if I took the Nazarite vow, I couldn't even drink grape juice. You can't even touch the fruit in any form or matter. You can't even eat a grape or a raisin if you take the Nazarite vow.
I didn't realize that.
No, you can't do any part of the fruit. Not even grape juice. Which, FYI, grape juice is a modern invention.
Is it?
Yeah, because pasteurizing. Without the pasteurizing process, you won't get grape juice. You'll get wine. In fact, when you go to the grocery store, all that white stuff on those grapes, that's yeast, and it will make wine. Alcohol is a preservative. It preserves. That's why it could be kept so long, is because of the wine. In fact, the fermenting process, which we don't see much anymore in today's world because refrigeration is better, but kimchi and other fermenting processes kept the food good if you didn't do over long periods of time. If you didn't do that, it would spoil and go bad. So this alcoholic process, fermentation, alcoholic, actually preserves, not destroys. Without it, things are destroyed, which I find interesting. Christ talked about the church that you can't put new wine, alcohol, in old wine skins, old churches, because it will burst. And the reason it will burst is because it's still fermenting and growing and learning.
Right.
And old churches, corrupt churches will not accept that. You can't put new wine in old wineskins. The kingdom of heaven is like a loaf leaven. Leaven is the alcoholic process. Bread has alcohol. If you think the word of wisdom teaches you can't have alcohol, you can't have bread.
Oh dear.
It has alcohol.
That I didn't realize. I need to go.
Okay.
Simply because I'm getting tired. But
Sure, no, that's fine. I always enjoy when you're able to come.
Thanks. Yeah, I enjoy our time together. You've done a lot of study, and it's interesting. And I admire the way that you've put it all down in your essays and your blogs and whatever.
Sure. I don't have everything there, but when people want to come and ask and talk, I'm willing to share everything. I don't hide anything. It's not easy putting on the blog to put everything there, but if someone wants to come and talk with me, I'm happy to share anything and everything.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing and spending your time. It'd be nice if we get together again, or whenever you're able to, really.
Well, today's the new moon. So the next lunar Sabbath is going to be Wednesday.
Okay, so yeah, that'd be fine. The same sort of time, or is that a bit early for you?
Sure. No, 11 my time
Yeah,
for your time, right? Because it's 5-hour difference right now.
it'd be 3. It's a 4-hour difference. It'd be 3 my
Okay.
time.
Well, we'd start at the same time. That would be good.
Okay, yeah, that sounds
Again, so I
good.
paused. So even the scriptures, they have depth to them. Have you heard of the concept PaRDeS?
Ponderize.
Yeah,
Yes,
no, it's
I
not
have. Yeah.
ponderize.
Oh, right.
PaRDeS.
No,
Yeah.
I haven't. No.
Oh, that was a fiasco, and with the
Was it? Yeah, yeah,
you remember, I remember that fiasco. But anyway,
yeah.
uh,
How do you spell it? Do
PaRDeS.
you know?
PaRDeS is where there's deeper meaning in the scriptures. Here's a little quick resource page from it. It, it I could read a little bit from that, but you said you need to go, so I'll let
Sure,
you,
yeah.
unless you want to stay more.
No, I need to go because I get tired.
Okay,
So
but
no, yeah,
the scriptures, I'll leave you with this. The scriptures testify of Christ and his mission and his deeds way more than people recognize. The stories, I should say, the histories are crafted to teach us about Christ and his mission and his gospels in so much depth. It's beautiful.
mm,
It's all over. But you won't see it unless you know Christ.
mm,
When you know him, you'll see it. The people who wrote these histories were prophets, meaning they were prophesying. Just as the Book of Mormon, title page from the Book of Mormon, Moroni states it is prophecy in both ways,
mm,
testifying of Christ and foretelling the future. When our eyes are open, we'll be able to see it. It's
mm.
all over. It's beautiful.
I believe so. Yes, yeah.
Anyways,
Okay. Well, thanks very much. Okay. Well, you have a good week.
okay. You
Um,
too.